I have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Gray, seconded by Councilman Red Eagle. Without further discussion, call for the question to come out of executive.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar,
Yes.
Chairman Waller,
Yes,
Secretary Yates.
Yes.
Motion passes.
we are out of executive. I'd like to take care of some personnel matters. We, of course, had an update from our attorney over our strategy with the A&B, but we have some other personnel issues. I'd like to entertain a motion, take care of our executive assistant and the other position of office. I'd entertain any motion.
I move that we award a 7.5% increase to our executive assistant. Second.
Second, I have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Harlan, seconded by Councilwoman Gray, to accept a 7.5 increase on position salary for our executive assistant. And we, under personnel, I'd like to add just that it's for Lacey Reynolds, and then she'll add the actual dollar amount into it. That's not for public consumption. Do we need to change anything other than that resolution? Then let's call for a question.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar,
Yes.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much, council. With that, I'd like to make a motion for our office staff for Linnea Turley and put her in as what our former staff worker. Do I put the hour in? To pay at the scale of our last,
Same amount.
same amount of our last office staff.
Would I ask the chairman to amend his motion?
Yes. I
To
need a
include-
second.
I'll I'm not gonna second until you amend. To include the fact that, that if there's any discrepancy in what she was making and what she is now to be making, that we would waive any issues of being paid back.
Any resolution involved? Yes, I do amend that. Thank you,
You
dear,
want-
for requesting that.
You want to put it in as a resolution reads?
Ma'am?
Can we approve the resolution as written?
Yes, and I'll read it into the records. All pay Ms. Turley previously received as an emergency or permanent hire shall be construed as proper payment, and no retro pay will be considered owed to either the Osage Minerals Council or Linnea Turley.
Now I'll second that motion.
Have a motion floor by Chairman Waller, second by Councilwoman Harlan. Yes, sir.
Call for the question.
Thank you. Call for the question.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar,
Yes.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray. Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Under 7B, we have finalized the biannual meeting agenda. We had sent the original draft in. I think our comments are stated. Councilman Rivard, of course, we've talked about the records as being the issue, the A, B, and B. Is there any changes we need to make to the,
Just
second?
Right, as long as we're gonna discuss the orphan well, plugging and abandonments. And also, I'd like to add that there be some discussion on the existing TA wells and production wells on existing leases and orphan leases.
That was a recommendation from our attorney as well. To have
That's a
that added to the
that's
agenda.
That's a suggestion from me.
Okay.
I agree.
That we added to the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Second chair? I agree with that, or I second it.
Can we repeat that?
I don't think it requires.
Council? It doesn't in here.
No, it doesn't require a motion. I have something to add.
Okay,
Sorry. Specifically with regard to the orphan wells, that we add on a new subparagraph that addresses the environmental liability. I want to be very clear that that is on there. Under, number 2, discussion of ongoing oil and gas, it should say, discussion of environmental liability.
That's pretty broad.
It is pretty broad.
That's a lot of what I just said.
Yep,
I
it'll
think-
encompass it all, it'll give us that wiggle room, and it is what our attorney recommended.
Can you make that change on there right now? Not one, but
I think she's got the notes, she can.
Yeah, I don't, we don't need to see it
The
right now.
concept is there.
You can be brought up.
Right.
Chairman, I got a suggestion.
Yes, go right ahead.
Councilman Rebar and I talked earlier this morning, and he brought up a good point that I think makes a lot of sense. And when it comes to oil and gas, and he brought up the point that they're plugging too many wells right now. It's being drilled in there. Every time a well is terminated or a lease is terminated, next thing you know, they're plugging the well, and they go right on the list, well, even without our consent. I think that needs to be brought up to the ban on consultation, because we're talking to people above what we're used to talking to in a council meeting, in a regular council meeting. And, we're, just like you said, we're losing a lot of oil. We're already 5,000 barrels a day. Maybe we need to make a resolution, or maybe we need to just talk to him on what it says, other item of importance down at the bottom, and bring it up, and maybe at the very end, or if you want to put it on the agenda, that's fine. If you don't, it can still be brought up. Yeah. What do you think, Paul?
Any important issue to either the BIA, which are not gonna say anything, or the OMC not covered above.
Well, one thing I'm concerned about, the superintendent's really good about coming up and making up a bunch of policies that are not in the CFRs. But there is one paragraph in the CFRs that really concerns me. I've heard from 2 different producers that when they were trying to sell their leases by assignment, the superintendent would send somebody out. If the well wasn't pumping up and down, they thought it wasn't producing.
Can't do that.
And the well was flowing. Even in one instance, it wasn't even flowing, but it had already produced the minimum royalty for the year. So it's still deemed a productive well. So I went and reread this CFRs that I thought I had memorized, that I just had overlooked before. And there's actually a paragraph that says no well shall be abandoned or shut in without the superintendent's permission. Well, we have thousands of wells shut in. They're not necessarily need to be plugged, that still have potential. There are a lot of operators with shut-in wells that someday they want to go in and rework, put back on production. But according to the CFRs, the superintendent could have that well plugged at her discretion, without any say-so from the environmental council. So,
It's right here.
I'd like
It looks
to
pretty good.
ask the superintendent to make a policy or just a blanket approval of letting our shut-in wells remain shut in, or not, at least not to be plugged if they are capable of production. There's actually a requirement that if it's capable of production, the operator has to produce it. I didn't realize that language was in there. She could make every single producer either produce that well that you say is capable of production or plug it. She could do that today. And that's a concern, particularly in today's climate with low oil prices and the American Burying Beetle. If she was to exercise that countywide, it'd be thousands of wells.
Okay.
Something for discussion.
No, it needs to be added here under 5, because it does have in here about the, graphic depicting production trends that answers that question, because you gotta know that to make the graph. Council? We're okay.
Back on that concept, I believe we need to keep the conversation as stated originally.
Yeah.
Just keep it without all the issues, and then that can come out with the conversation. But when we put something here, I feel like we're stating this is our stance. I, for one, we're starting to see that maybe the process is correct and there is no value in a lot of these wells. And so this concept that was drawn up, 20, 30 years ago to keep these wells open, they probably should have been plugged. I mean, I'm starting to think now, after looking at thousand wells that, we're not seeing the value. So, I think we need to really, I think this study that we're doing, this survey is helping buttress that the BIA needs to close up that lease, and that includes getting the wells dealt with correctly, rather than leaving them open and then handing them up. I mean, I'm starting to see it, I'm not for assurances, but, but we have a different concept on that regard too. So, anyway, just some thoughts there that I think we ought to keep the conversation general on the operator-less wells.
Council?
Yeah, just like how we have Board Book It and we have, this is a suggestion that as we build this, agenda out to them, and so when we're in the room, we're gonna be able to, like, for instance, whether it's gas measurement, you have some, kind of like what our attorney was saying, when you have facts, when you have the verification or the pictures of, like, we were talking about how bad that one location is, if we can insert that in this as we're there, it's just like on our Board Book It, like when we click on, that picture comes up or that document. I think it would be really nice to have that, because if not, we continue to have these biannual agreements and then they just go, we don't have any way to track it. And then that way we'd at least be able to say, okay, this is what we showed last time. And I just think it's just maximize what we have here. And I think even we're all more informed by using our Board Book It. And if we take this, like those 33 recommendations, even though then we just have that document and it's there as you pull it up and we bring it up for discussion. So just a recommendation.
Yes.
Could I ask that maybe second chair communicate with Wilson and you guys wordsmith that subject line in our agenda?
Sure, and I think Councilwoman Harlan perfected that, generalized it with environmental concerns. That way we can
Whatever
word it
you
up
feel.
without getting specific.
Environmental liability.
Liabilities.
Good
whatever.
one, sister.
And my concern is Wilson asked us to put it in there,
We're good, aren't we?
so
Yeah.
if you could
Lacey,
check in.
that's the only real addition that we have. I do like the comments about it's a redundancy and it's worst case scenario, but we are setting a foundation this has been brought to you for now 4 years. And what we're getting ready to say is we've done all we can do except for the next, you've left us no option, is what I'm going to end up saying at the end. Lacey, does that send us through a resolution with amendment? And we're ready for a vote. Don't we have a motion on the floor?
I move that we adopt the agenda as has been finalized today.
Second, I have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Harlan, seconded by Councilman Redcorn. Any other discussion before I jump down? So dry in here.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Does the BIA have the ability to add to the agenda?
No, I can't say that. I can't speak on their behalf.
I just realized that there's one thing, when Councilwoman Gray brought this up, the last consultation meeting we had a very nice spreadsheet showing what the information that they did not give us on the dry gas report. I've not heard and I asked for that information to be provided. Of course, they have not.
4 times.
So I would like to put that on the agenda to ask them, what's the status of you giving this information?
Second.
To answer Councilman Rebar's question about can they add to the agenda, I don't think so. I think this is our agenda. They just want a heads up so that they can respond to what we were going to bring up in the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
And we had always sent an agenda out, but we've also went and sent the talking points questions that you have just brought up also. Councilwoman.
I'm happy to amend my motion to include a status of updated data on this agenda. on this consultation agenda. And that could be, if you'll keep going up, it could be under discussion of ongoing oil and gas development issues.
Perfect.
If Tolly will amend his second,
I agreed.
then that should be added on, and it's just updated statistical data, update of statistical data. And we wanna make these, as broad as possible, because as we're having dialogue, it may open the door to something else. And we don't want them to say, oh, that wasn't on the agenda,
Yeah.
so we want them broad. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I call for the question.
Call for the question, please.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar.
Yes,
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. And you both will work on that to correct that direct. We'll sign it and send it out. I'll sign it now.
I'll be available if you need anything.
We're in good shape, don't we? With that being said,
I have a question.
yes, sir.
Just curious, is our agenda public information for all of our headline owners to see going into our?
Only if the public is available to come to that meeting.
No,
No, that's.
I mean,
Consultation.
So it's a consultation between an agency and the Bureau, or the United States. So I would say it's probably not a distribution.
Well, the reason I ask is because we're discussing it in public
Yeah,
for all our headline owners to hear and see.
sure.
They can't see our screen, I suspect.
Yes, they can.
Oh, can they?
Yeah.
So they already do have access.
We're not
Yes, sir.
distributing it to the
Because-
public, though.
I expect that some of us might get phone calls from some of our headline owners
yes, sir.
wanting to know, well, I've heard you all say something, tell me more about that. Are we free to discuss our agenda?
You're free to do whatever you want.
You're free to talk, yes, you are free to discuss what you as a council member believe is going to be brought up.
Okay.
You certainly don't know how the dialogue's gonna go unless you have some kind of skill, like you can make that board start working again.
I'm just saying that if one of them saw something on our agenda today, during today's meeting.
You can talk about it.
And say, well, what is all that involved? What do you think, what is that? Are we all free to
The
maybe
mechanics
share?
of it are open.
Okay, just want to clarify.
It's the dialogue itself that happens in there.
Okay.
Thank you. That is a good clarification, and that's actually going to be a process that's going to be very important because we're going to roll right out of this meeting, go to a oil and gas summit, which we need to respond to that through the questions. With that being said, we will also have it on our website. Anything of that information. So with that, Lacey, are we ready to go? Are we just minute meetings and adjourn?
Summit report.
Excuse me, I do have a budget to have a reflection. Councilwoman Foreman, we added in the adjustments you made to the budget, but it's really just the adjustment of donations, isn't it? Because I didn't see a change in the working budget.
Well, we increased some of the expenses.
Yes.
And I didn't put it on here because you said we didn't have to vote on it, but we've increased expenses a little bit. We've updated it for the money we've gotten since the last time we talked about this. We're still ahead of the game.
Does she need a resolution to have this budget?
After the completion of the summit, she'll have to come back with like the final expenditure, so we can have the budget.
We'll be ready.
We're fine.
We'll be ready.
Because it's private dollars, it's not.
That's correct. I just want to make that to our constituents is why it's not S510, it's not 395, and it dang sure ain't a PL account.
Right, and I would like to reemphasize that, because I just heard the other day, somebody at the expo, maybe it was you, Paul, said, they're spending shareholder money. Well, we're not. It's all of the expenses come from our service field, our producers, our gas and oil purchasers, our partners in the.
Our partners and vendors, and leave it at that. Okay? And I understand their questions, but, do the best you can. With that, minute meetings?
I move to adopt approve the October 4th, regular meeting minutes.
Second, I have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Harlan, seconded by Councilman Redcorn y'all have any discussion? Yes, Councilwoman Gray.
The word for Dante is spelled Dante. Outside of that, I didn't have any other problem. They misspelled the name.
Of the address the chief gave in our meeting.
Right, and when he addressed, he talked about.
Is it
Dante.
Lorenzo? Dante Lorenzo?
No, no, Dante, Halleck.
Halleck.
Yeah,
I'll approve my motion with the scrivener's, correction on scrivener's error.
Second.
Second, thank you, second. Call for the question.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar.
Yes.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Abstain.
Councilwoman Gray,
yes.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. I'll second it. Have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Harlan, seconded by Chairman Waller. Call for the question, please, to adjournment.
Councilman Rebar,
Yes.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Before I hit the gavel, I need to ask Lacey one question. Since the resolution for me to go to meet Secretary Bernhardt with the chief, that resolution's already for travel. Is executive going to pick it up, or are you gonna have to go through accounting?
That's a good question.
Well, I've sent the executive already to see if they're going to. I just want to give my council a heads up. If not, I have a resolution that allow Lacey to go into accounting and give me a flight. But actually, I think executive should be covering this on my travel.
I would recommend that because we're at this late hour, he asked at the late hour, and we don't know, he requested at the late hour. We don't know that, we certainly take this up at our next meeting on, if we have to be retroactive, we can, because you can go ahead and book the flight on the resolution you have, but what we would have is, per diem, things like that.
Are you okay with that? Thank you, dear, for the clarification.
I think the clarification was, didn't we already approve that we knew this meeting was coming when Mr. Mullin
We
was
tabled
here?
it. We never did vote on it.
Well.
But I think we could retroactively vote on it.
Yeah, and also executives actually doing the meeting. That we didn't call for it. With that, we've already had the motion. I want to thank you all. Go Bucks. But I also want to tell you.
Go
my-
Huskies!
My father graduated in one of the best teams in 1929 for Pahuska. I have their jersey and I wish you all the best because our nephews are playing against each other. So go Huskies.
Go Panthers.
Panthers, we got our Machutes over there. Thank you all.
So now that we're out of count.
Now, what's the bet? You gotta give me points, Myra.
Remember